emerging from beneath the sea to destroy China once again. There's not one, not two, but three megalodons. It's the Meg 2, the trench.
Mafia, wake up, wake up.
You have created a monster and it will destroy you.
Welcome back to the Monsters vs. Men podcast, the bargain basement of Monster Podcasting Airways, where two friends try to stay alive and stay connected by chatting about weekly monster movies. Now, this week, I'm joined by not Eric, but by John with no H. He's the third shark to my two bigger sharks.
Well, thank you so much, and I am very pleased to be joining the Chinese uncle I never knew I had.
Oh,
Alex.
Yes. Thank you. Actually, John, I don't know. You come up with really good ideas. Maybe you're more like that inventor, or maybe you're like that double-crossing lady, and you just meet your untimely demise later. Like, just a lot of great ideas.
Yeah, I think you should definitely cue me up as the double crosser, and then that way when Eric shows back up, he can tap me on the shoulder, and I'm not expecting it, and then I turn around, and he punches me off the dock, and a shark eats me.
Oh, yeah. No, I like this. This is a nice little arc.
Yeah.
Maybe we can set up a nice little villain arc for you for whenever Eric does come back, and I can have you surprise to jump him on the show. He just won't know you're on the line. I like this idea.
Plans inside of plans. All right.
Yeah. We'll make you into a heel by the end of this. And for those who don't know, John is one of the executive producers for the show, and he has given us phenomenal ideas week after week, including, John, you did mention at one point this Giant Animals Monster series that you wanted us to do, which I am very keen on doing, but you also have a vendetta against. Let's get into this deep-seated history that you have against just giant normal animals.
Yeah, I mean, well, I wouldn't say that I want you guys to do a giant animal series, but it came up on a previous episode you guys mentioned. In fact, it might have been the last Meg episode where you guys mentioned, maybe we'll do a series about totally normal animals, or maybe we'll do a series about giant animals. And well, when you guys threw out that idea, I couldn't help myself, so I started curating a list of giant animal monster movies, and I just am a glutton for punishment. I couldn't stop myself, I guess. But in general, I'm not a big fan of monster movies where the monster is just a giant version of an animal or a giant insect, and there's a lot of reasons for that, but basically, in my brain, I guess it all goes back to my childhood. But
what giant creature did you meet?
In my when you're a kid, you're forming ideas about the way things work and definitions of things, and for me as a kid, a giant monster was really like a Godzilla or a Gamera, right? Or a King Kong, although he really skirts the line there.
Mm-hmm.
But really, when you have a giant monster movie, you've got a monster that is just totally unstoppable. There's, by definition, there's nothing that humanity can do to kill these creatures. They're impossible to stop. At best, humans might be able to distract the giant monster from its destructive path, or maybe divert it, one way or the other.
Mm-hmm.
But on the other hand, I feel like animals, by their very definition, are just so closely linked to human beings and almost defined by the ability of a human being to hunt it, or certainly to kill it, right? Any animal that exists on the face of the planet, human beings have killed them for sport or for lust or for greed.
Yeah. Take that, Mother Nature.
Yeah, and so you know, and if you look at some of the most famous giant animal or giant insect movies, like them, or I guess you could consider King Kong to one extent, or some of the Kong sequels like King Kong Lives. It's really just a matter of time before the giant animal, the monster, is cornered by the military and just obliterated in a array of flamethrowers or machine gun fire or something like that. Like the end of them, they're just being like torched, I think. And
yes,
and geez, like the brutal ending of King Kong Lives, where he's just like totally obliterated by tanks and 50 cal, ammunition.
Yeah.
Just brutal. So anyway, when I think of monster movies, I don't like the idea of just being set up to mourn the brutal destruction of the monster at the hands of truly bloodthirsty humans.
Yeah, I'm there with you. I don't really care for just giant animal X. I just think it lacks creativity, personally.
Yeah.
So I get it for some reasons. Like, I get why King Kong, right, is that way, because probably technical limitations at the time, and then he's become such a household name that you just keep building from there. Whereas something like Godzilla is an easy one, but the Roderasaurus, even from 20,000 Fathoms, is, I think, a pretty interesting monster. And again, it's not quite easy to kill. It's not a matter of just getting it in the right place, right?
That's right. Yeah.
There's a lot more to it than that. I mean, I believe there's even a roller coaster involved. So yeah, I definitely agree with you there in regards to that.
I mean, yeah. So when you invited me to participate in an episode, reviewing Meg 2, I took it a little bit as a kick in the junk. I knew that that this would be a movie that maybe I wasn't immediately inclined to, but I just started trying to think about it and think about ways that I could approach it fairly. One interesting thing about shark movies, if you think about it from the other point of view, like the other thing so we could think of the Meg 2 as a giant monster movie and debate that. And we could also look at it from the sort of like the history of shark movies, things like Jaws or Deep Blue Sea, or any other number of shark movies. And the horror, to me, the horror of a shark movie like Jaws is like the nightmare of being savagely eaten alive, of being totally helpless, out of our element, out in the open water, stalked by a creature that is, supremely attuned to hunt and kill in the water, and just human beings being completely powerless to stop it. So, from that point of view, we start to sort of see, some similarities with kaiju or giant monster movies where you have a sort of unstoppable, implacable foe. So that's sort of in the Meg's favor. But then, like, sort of pulling it back in the other direction, to me, when you increase the size of a shark to the size of a kaiju, basically to a size, like a Godzilla size, you sort of remove that terror of being brutally mauled to death, because now the shark's mouth is so big, it can swallow you like a spaghetti-o, it doesn't even have to chomp down on you.
Yeah, but does that mean now you get digested like you're in a sarlacc pit?
Oh no,
or something like that.
Yeah, I suppose that's terrifying.
Is it more like a Pinocchio scenario?
That's right. Yeah, there's actually, if you get swallowed by the Meg, you end up on a whimsical adventure. You don't suffer horrifying death. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, that's definitely what happens in this movie. Yeah.
Yeah. So, one other thing I did to try to like put myself in the mindset of trying to enjoy this movie and trying to give it a fair shake is I just try to see if I can associate it or imagine it existing in the same world as like Godzilla or the Toho movie monsters. And so, I'm a man of deep thought, as you well know.
Of course.
So over the course of the week, I was meditating, during my time of meditation early in the morning. And I was just asking myself, John, which Toho movie monster do you think really stands the best chance out in the open water in a battle with the Meg? Excluding Godzilla, of course, because Godzilla's king of the monsters. He's always going to win.
Yeah.
So I was giving that some thought to try to, frame this up in a positive way in my mind. So I gave it some thought, but Alex, I was kind of wondering what you thought about that, or if there's a Toho monster that jumps to mind as like, this monster would have a pretty good chance against the Meg.
That's a really good question. Because Ghidorah, he's not made for the water. Mm-mm. So he's isolated. Anguirus, he just kind of floats there like a turtle. I don't see him making it too long either. You see, that's a bit of a cheat code. I won't use this one, but Mechagodzilla. I mean, he might get a little rusty in the saltwater, but he might take them out before that happens. The other option is for some reason, and I hate this movie, but for some reason I feel like Varan might be a good candidate for an aquatic battle.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know why I feel that way, but I think he might be pretty adaptable to that situation. The other one would be Manda, but Manda's so long. He's a thin, long target. Right? But he
too long, too thin. Doesn't stand a chance.
He gets snapped in half too easy. Is that what it is?
Must be.
So I'm gonna go with. Golly, I didn't think I'd go with Varan when you asked this, but you know what? That's what I'm gonna go with. What about you?
Yeah, I love the image of Mechagodzilla just totally unleashing barrages of finger missiles and tummy lasers just in the middle of the ocean, just completely, obliterating, all the coral reef and, whales and stuff, the collateral whale damage. It's tough because, I was trying to think of aquatic monsters too, like Evera, the sea monster, but that's just he's just a big,
soft shell, man.
Yeah,
I don't know.
Yeah, he's just gonna be lunch for a giant, shrimpy lobster guy. I think though, as I was thinking of, who's brutal enough to take on the Meg, or who's brutal enough to take on that very grisly apex Meg that shows up in Meg 2. I think the smog monster.
When you started talking about it, I was like, smog monster. He just has to sit there and they die.
Yeah, that would be pretty grisly. That would be the shark suffering a brutal eaten alive scenario. That's pretty tough.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think the smog monster is the option. I mean, he gets started in the ocean.
Heck yeah.
Yeah, man, that makes sense. I'm gonna go with you. I'm gonna go with smog monster. I'm pivoting. Well, that was my original idea, by the way. Definitely not attaching my cart to yours.
Well, yeah, and what do you figure the odds are for Gabra? What's the over under there?
I'm hoping for the Sarlacc pit digestion, not necessarily the adventure, not the whimsical adventure for him.
Absolutely.
Yeah. If he could go away as soon as possible, that'd be fine. All right, John. Shall we get into the movie?
Let's do it.
All right. So the sequel for the Meg 2, The Trench, felt like it was in production for a long time. Boasting a mostly returning cast, a new director, and 3 times the Megalodon action. Do you think the series learned from its past, or is it destined not to last?
Oh, man. What a question. Is it possible that both can be true? Or both can be not true?
Yeah, right?
Yeah. I'm not sure. You know what? I feel like the Meg 2 probably did learn from its past. It just did not learn the lessons that maybe we wanted it to learn as sort of like traditional giant monster movie fans. You know, the Meg was very successful worldwide. You know, it was a huge blockbuster, especially in China. You know, and it was, you know, produced with a global international audience in mind, and especially the Chinese market. So is it destined to last or not? You know, again, from our point of view, you know, watching the Meg or the Meg 2, you know, depending on what our expectations might be, we might be like, I don't know, man. I don't know if there's going to be a third one on the way. But from all reports, the Meg 2 again is doing very well globally. You know, it did all right in the U.S., but I think it's still really chomping up those box offices in China.
Ooh,
so,
that's good.
You know, maybe we will see a third one.
Okay, yeah. I mean, they kind of set up a possible third one. I mean, they definitely they keep the problem around. So I'll be interested to see if that is. I don't feel like it's necessary, but it also the way it ends, it's like, guys, this problem's coming back. I don't get the ending, but yeah, I'm with you. This is a really weird one for me to be able to answer in terms of I wouldn't mind a third one, but I also don't know if it's built to last, and I don't know if it learned its lessons here. Yes, this is a new director, and while I do think that there are a few learned mistakes from the previous movie that they maybe tried to correct it, I think it actually manages to repeat almost every mistake from the first movie in some way, which makes no sense to me. A completely different guy directed this movie, and it's the same mistakes. It's a movie that's split in two, and it really just feels like it's two completely separate movies that are just tied together by Jason Statham in a lot of ways. That being said, though, I do think that every other part of this movie is an improvement on the last one. So I'm enjoying the movie more while still having similar feelings to that episode where I just kind of railed on the movie for being two halves. But I think the Meg: The Trench manages to be more enjoyable overall, even if it is like a repeat of the last movie in a lot of ways.
Yeah. As I sat down to watch it, as I sort of already indicated, I found myself kind of predisposed to maybe not enjoy it as much as I would have liked. Although I really did enjoy the Meg, the first one. And as I thought about it, I just kept trying to think of ways to approach the Meg 2: The Trench in a way where I could give it a fair shake, like looking for a way in, and not be dismissive of it as like a big dumb monster movie, you know, so it doesn't really matter whether it's good or not. And then, you know, I also thought of, you know, some giant monster movie fans might dismiss it out of hand, you know, because it isn't a Japanese giant monster, and you know, other people might dismiss it out of hand because of the involvement of Chinese co-producers. So as I was thinking about it, I was looking for a way, and I was looking for a way to connect it to the sort of tapestry of the movie monsters and monster movies that I love. And as I started thinking about it, I thought, well, you know, this movie, Meg 2, it sort of belongs to a long series, a progression of films that has sort of been woven through this current renaissance of kaiju and giant monster movies that we're in, you know, stretching back to Pacific Rim. You know, basically since Pacific Rim, since Legendary started producing a lot of monster movies, there's been a lot of Chinese funding and Chinese co-production and Chinese involvement in these giant monster movies. So, I mean, we've got like The Great Wall, certainly Pacific Rim 2, the Meg 2, definitely Kong Skull Island, Godzilla King of the Monsters, Godzilla vs. Kong. So the Meg 2, although in isolation, some fans might be ready to dismiss it as, it's a shark movie, doesn't really belong, but it really does belong to the series of these kaiju renaissance movies that we're seeing, thanks to Legendary Pictures. And I mean, once we have a few years distance from these movies, and we're not just, inspecting them and expecting so much from them. I mean, we'll look back at a movie like The Great Wall and just be amazed that this movie exists. I mean, the cast of The Great Wall is insane.
That's the Matt Damon movie, right?
Well, yes, it's got Matt Damon, Willem Dafoe, Pedro Pascal. It's got Andy Lau, who's perhaps, the biggest star in Asia, and Tien Jing, and I mean, just imagine describing that cast to anybody. Movie title notwithstanding. If you tell someone, "Hey, Matt Damon, Pedro Pascal, and Willem Dafoe are in a movie. You want to see it?" They're going to say, "Heck yeah!" So, I think once we have some distance on these, we're going to look back and sort of be astonished at what we actually got, including films like The Meg and The Meg 2. And then the more I thought about that, so The Meg 2 is part of this current kaiju renaissance. It really is. And then as I started thinking about these current films, I was also thinking of how do these films and The Meg 2, how do they fit into sort of the tapestry of the history, the heritage of giant monster movies and kaiju movies? And, I'm thinking about, Jason Statham and the Chinese star in this, Jing Wu. And, these two guys, they reminded me right away of, Akira Takarada and Nick Adams. Now, do they have the same, charisma as Akira Takarada and Nick Adams? Well, that's debatable. But
right.
But that drew it to my mind another series of international co-productions, including such films that are now regarded as classic as Monster Zero or Invasion of Astro Monster, King Kong Escapes, War of the Gargantuas, Frankenstein Conquers the World, Latitude Zero, all these Toho classics, and then some other ones like The Green Slime, with Linda Miller, she's in that too. And when those movies came out, when King Kong Escapes came out, giant monster movie fans, well, the sort of old guard, they hated it. They thought King Kong Escape sucked because there was no stop motion animation. It wasn't serious.
Wow.
It wasn't, many of the sort of dismissive claims that might be made against a movie like The Meg 2, those were the same.
CGI. Yeah. I mean, it's the same argument as CGI versus practical effects, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I hadn't even considered that. Yeah, what a great analogy. And those movies were also full of tropes, and you could call them either rip-offs or references to current trends in movies. King Kong Escapes is a clear, we could say, reference or rip-off or homage to the James Bond spy movie trend of the 60s. You've got I think Miss Piranha is her name. She's like a double agent. There's a spy angle going on, and Doctor Who is, very much in the same mold as like a Dr. No or some of the crazy Bond villains. So anyway, I kind of got off on a ramble here, but as I started thinking more about The Meg 2 and does it belong in a discussion about giant monster movies? I think it absolutely does. It's clearly part of the current kaiju renaissance, and it belongs to this legacy of international co-productions for making monster movies. And when I started thinking about it like that, I really began to settle in and find myself able to enjoy this movie. Because when I started thinking about it through the lens of like a King Kong Escapes or a Latitude Zero, I started thinking like, okay, well, like, all right, like maybe it's a bit of a stretch to compare Jason Statham and Jing Woo to Nick Adams and Akira Takarada, but I mean, if you think about like Russ Tamblyn in War of the Gargantuas, that he wasn't really thrilling in that role, but it's still a good movie. So what other similarities?
Whoa!
Well, we'll save that war for maybe MBM Plus or something like that. But
there you go.
But I found a lot of other stuff that was like, hey, this reminds me of other monster movies that I love. Like, speaking of the trench, when our heroes and explorers are finally on the seabed, when they're on the bottom of the Mariana Trench, they're walking through this valley of like exotic and phosphorescent flora and fauna, and they've got these big almost like space suits or radiation suit looking things on.
Yeah.
And it reminded me right away, it took me back to the original Mothra, when the explorers are wearing their radiation suits and they're going through the irradiated jungle and being attacked by giant plants and strange things. And I thought, yeah, all right, yeah, the Meg 2 is sort of cut from the same cloth as some of these other movies that we love.
Oh, okay. So it's sort of coming around on it a little bit.
Yeah, starting to.
Well, I'll wear you down. Yeah. And kind of the sequence that you're mentioning is where some of my love for this movie begins. And the weird thing here, though, is that I feel like I'm repeating myself from the Meg and my commentary on that, because my pros here are almost all the same. When they're in the trench and they're navigating it, right? They've wrecked both their ships. They got the limited oxygen. I love these types of moments where there's like that ticking time bomb in the back and they're also being hunted. Okay. Yes, you got me. But I think that if I had to pick a movie out of the two movies that are in this one again, I would pick this first half again.
Oh.
Where we're in the trench. I just love it. Yes. Is it not? It's not as good as Underwater, the movie. But because it does have a lot of those same elements. But I think that they really execute the sequence pretty well. I think it's appropriately tense. It's just dark enough and interesting enough of a world under there to really keep my attention. And then these 3 megalodons hunting you is pretty thrilling. And that last dash to the underwater tanker is pretty exciting. And we really kill a lot of characters pretty quickly in the sequence, especially Curtis with the implosion helmet the last second.
Yeah.
Oh, that was brutal. That was worse than the one in Underwater because it was right before she's safe instead of just starting the mission, right? I was glad to see these moments because a lot of times the Meg 1 played things really safe. It was like the movie was scared of blood. Whereas we get it's not grotesque or anything like that this time around, but it does have some more horror moments in it. And I appreciate that. Like when it's swimming at the beach, we do see a blood trail behind it where it's eating the people, which I really appreciate. A shark movie with some blood in it this time. And then you get all these moments at the bottom of the sea, and then they get that double cross that feels pretty obvious, which is okay.
Yeah.
This movie isn't aiming for a plot twist, and this isn't a character that we are particularly attached to that is doing the double cross. And then we get moments like Jason Statham swimming at the bottom of the trench with no suit, which they convinced me that he could totally really do this, and I haven't even bothered to look it up because I'm like, you know what? I believe Jason Statham could swim at the bottom of the Mariana Trench.
They say it. Yeah, they say it right in there. It's not about the pressure. It's about the water. So,
Yeah, and I was like, that's interesting. You know what? I should have looked it up before we did this episode. I couldn't bring myself to do it. because I don't think I want to dispel that reality for me.
Let's embrace
that
a life of
possible.
faith. Yeah, let's do it.
Yeah, right. So I really like all of these moments in that sequence, and then how they get out of it, and of course, then the back end of the film. We have a lot more campy elements going on here, just like the previous movie.
Mm-hmm.
We kind of load the back half with the campy moments, but I actually think they handle those tonal shifts better in this film.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it handles its characters about the same, but there's just a lot more antics going on. Like the evolution of DJ. His moments in this film were such a nice surprise.
I couldn't agree more. Absolutely.
I could. He was such a welcome re-addition to the series because his evolution is just it's so goofy and awesome, and it's funny that he can back it up somewhat, right?
That's
Like he's not great, but he can't. He's definitely been training in between the last two movies. So that, and then our final sequence, I don't think actually lines up to be as good as the original Meg, like in the ship versus Meg fight.
Mm-hmm.
I think we eliminate the Megs actually too quickly once the time comes. But other than that, I mean, I really kind of enjoyed this movie. I do have some nitpicks that I'll probably get to later, but I want to hear a little more from you, John.
Sure. Yeah. Well, I am picking up all the stuff that you're putting down. The references to underwater, the references to DJ becoming like this action hero. You know, as I was watching the Meg, and I mean this analogy in the most respectful way possible, I just kept thinking Meg 2: The Trench is like a Chinese buffet. You know, it's like waking up Saturday morning, right? And you're hungry, right? You're so hungry, but you don't cook scrambled eggs. You don't eat Captain Crunch. You look at the clock and you say, you know what? I'm going to wait until 10:59, and I'm going to roll up to the Chinese buffet, and I'm going to stroll through those doors at 11 a.m. sharp, and I'm going to see the golden light sparkling all over mounds of General Tso's chicken and lo mein and fried rice and everything that you want at a Chinese buffet. But then also you look to the right and you see, oh yeah, they also have chicken strips and French fries. And then they also have I guess it's pizza. Sure. Am I going to eat it? I don't know, but I'm kind of glad it's here. And they have something that looks like sushi, and they have some delicious looking, desserts as well. They've got soft serve ice cream. Now, I didn't come here for any of that stuff, but I'm glad it's here, and as I'm watching the Meg 2, I'm like, well, I kind of came here for a giant shark movie, but I'm really glad that there are like half a dozen Jurassic Park references, and there's also like a pretty amusing buddy cop movie happening.
Yes.
And there's also like a thriller happening, and there's also like a Jason Statham eco warrior action movie happening. Like, it was great. Yeah. And then you look to the right, and what do you see there? Staying warm at the bottom of the sea, references to, underwater, or, any number of, sea monster type movies. It's all there. It's all there. Now, I mean, you can ask the question, hey, if I'm eating lo mein and garlic bread and General Tso's chicken and those little cakes, am I going to have a stomachache at the end of this? Well, maybe. But did I have a good time eating it while I was there? Well, maybe. Yeah.
Should I do it every Saturday? Maybe not.
Maybe not. Yeah, maybe not.
I love this analogy. Oh man.
But it definitely it brings us to the precipice of talking about maybe some of the things that didn't quite work in the Meg, So
yeah, what were some of the things that really didn't work for you?
well, I'll tell you what. When I go into a monster movie, and maybe it's not fair to judge every monster movie like this, but to me, when I'm watching a monster movie, I see the monsters as characters. So I am looking for, any little scrap that the screenwriters are going to throw to us, or the cinematographers, to indicate some character for the monsters or some motivation for the monsters, right? So if you think about the best monster movies, you think about King Kong, right? Like, no, they didn't write a lot of drama for him, except maybe, his death scene. But the way that O'Brien animated him, there's character in the way that he fights creatures, the way that he plays with the T-Rex's jaw after he defeats him, the way that he interacts with Fay Ray. And in Godzilla movies, in almost every Godzilla movie, despite the fact that we like to think of Godzilla as an unstoppable force of nature, or, an analogy for the horrors of nuclear weapons, in almost every Godzilla movie, he has some sort of tick or, action that gives him character, right? Whether it's his insane ferocity in King Kong versus Godzilla, where he's sort of gleefully clapping and mocking Kong, or the way that he communicates with his pal Anguirus in Godzilla versus Gigan, or any number of Showa movies, Destroy All Monsters. Godzilla's got personality, and we kind of know what he wants or how he's going to behave. My biggest criticism of Meg 2 is that, there's no motivation for these monsters. And maybe, I could see the counter argument. Well, they're sharks, they're killing machines. And I mean, maybe that's true too, but they do not act like wild animals in this movie, right? Like, if I walk into a national park and there's a bear there, now I might be attacked by that bear, but that bear might just walk by me, The sharks in this movie, I don't know how to describe them. On the one hand, they're kind of like, they're like robots or computers that are just programmed for very strict stimulus response. If there's a living thing near me, I'm gonna eat it. Right? They behave like a Cookie Monster on cocaine. Like cookie, eat cookie. Like rather than like a shark. And like I never want to be in the water with a shark, but there's not like 100% chance that a great white's going to eat me if I'm in the water with it. It might swim by me. So these monsters, these sharks in particular, they don't seem to have a rhyme or reason other than the sort of bare minimum, like, rules of what attracts these monsters that they lay out. Like, we know they're attracted to light, and other than that, like, if you're moving, they're going to eat you. I feel like that's a really big missed opportunity, because there are a few scenes in this movie where you see like the three Megs swimming together in a formation. And when I saw that, I was like, oh man, like it looks like these sharks are on a mission, they have a purpose, and I want to know what that purpose is. And sort of like all the puzzle pieces were there, right? Because there's the giant octopus or the kraken. I don't know how it's described, but but we also don't really know anything about the kraken. They're not even really set up as like, ancient rivals or anything, but the pieces were all there, right? You had the illegal mining operation on the bottom of the sea. You had the illegal dumping of radioactive waste at the beginning of the movie. Those two things are like a classic monster movie, the hubris of men, the greed of men, unleashing a terror, in this case, it could have been the kraken, right? And they were laying these seeds through the movie too, like, hey, the sort of domesticated Meg, Hai Chi, she's been acting really strange recently, and then you find these other, the sort of apex Meg and the beta Meg at the bottom of the sea, and they're all sort of like, hey, it's like they're being called, all the pieces were there, like, yeah, maybe they were stirred to action because this giant octopus had been released, but instead they just, they're like cocaine bear underwater, cocaine shark, they're just, if something moves, oh man, they're on it,
Yeah.
They're mindless killing machines in the worst possible way, I would say.
Yeah. I think you hit on something there that I totally agree with. I was really disappointed that the trained shark thing didn't really pay off much at all.
Yeah.
Really, like it really had no purpose at the end of the day. Like, does he get it to not attack him in the water at the end? Yes, but did we really build up to that? With that, like, was the buildup worth that point in the story? Seems weird to me, and I don't like that they needed to be more merciless. I think. Like almost playful with their food if you want to make them really evil. Because it's like you said, it is kind of like they're on a mission, but there is no mission except to cause carnage on the screen. There's no personality to them, and it does kind of take a little bit out of the interest of them for me. I was really hoping for that human shark team up where Haichi would team up with the humans to take out the other two or something like that.
Yeah.
That would have been pretty cool. Or even the opposite. Like they think it's going to help them and then it turns on them, right?
Yeah.
That would have been cool. But instead, we just kind of opt out of doing either one of those options, which is pretty lame. It's kind of a lame half measure. We're just going to let Haichi just go into the ocean, have babies, and then we're gonna have this problem again in like 2 years.
That's right. What a lame payoff, right? They're sort of, oh, she's acting so strange. Oh, look, there's Meg. It's like they're being called by some force, and they're just like, oh yes, the ancient mating ritual. It's like, all right,
right. And then they end that ritual with going to destroy a nice luxury beach on China.
Yeah, like it's part of the millennium old Meg mating ritual. Yeah,
it's like everybody, people go to Cancun for crazy parties. Well, megalodons once they emerge from the thermocline, they gotta go to China. I don't know what that's about, but that the issues here also kind of bleed into my other problem with this series in general is that the series kills its villains way too early. They have what's her name? They have Jess who turns on them, and then she just gets eaten by a Meg while on a phone call. And then we get Rainn Wilson in the previous movie. He gets eaten after lying to the team about what he's done. But there's so much more opportunity for like that more megalomaniac type of behavior, where you could see their greed really like it's almost like a cartoonish level. Our movie already is going to cartoonish levels. Let's have our villains go there too. But instead, we get someone like Montez, who is fine. But frankly, he's not threatening, really, because you see him crying about his girlfriend, and you see him upset about it for quite some time. he instead of like being the stone cold killer, like for hire, he just comes off kind of like a whiny baby for me. So he was never intimidating. So I think the series as a whole has kind of failed on the villain front. And then I think the last thing for me in regards to my disappointments of this film is all right. So the elephant in the room in this movie is that Soo-Yin is not in it, right? She was one of the big 2 or 3 main characters in the last film,
right?
The love interest, right? And her daughter's a big part of the story. Her dad was a big part of the story. Well, they killed her off screen, everybody. And they give no explanation. Am I wrong, John? Did they mention anything? Like the only thing I thought maybe was hinted to was that she maybe died in the trench or something.
I watched the movie twice, and I couldn't tell you what happened to her. I just know that they just sort of wrote her out of the
but they kept her daughter around, which is great because the relationship between Jason Statham's character and her daughter is really good. I like the way they play off each other, just like in the previous movie.
Mm-hmm.
I think they do really well. But it was a weird. I feel like they almost should have just done like the James Bond type of thing in regards to this character and her relationships, and just phased out the daughter and her, and not brought her brother. Even though I like the brother character, he could have been the same character without being that person's brother. but that's okay. I mean, it's not a big hang up, but it is something like, as someone who saw the first film, I'm like thinking a lot like, well, what happened to her? What would happen to her? And then it just never gets answered.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I definitely feel the same way. Yeah. They I mean, obviously I've been focusing a lot on the monsters, but I mean, it's clear there was a lot lacking in terms of developing the characters. But I mean, like, you've kind of already alluded to the fact that this movie is basically at least two movies smashed into one. You've got like the journey to the trench and the action, at the bottom of the Mariana Trench, and then all the carnage and the mercenary battles on Fun Island. But I mean, you could have easily probably cut out half the cast and maybe trim this down to 90 minutes or 100 minutes and had a lot tighter movie, or been able to focus on more characters. I mean, even with what they have, like you're saying, like Montez, they could have developed him more. I mean, he could have been on that ship at the beginning of the movie. And then that could have been like, they could have at least established like, hey, Montez, he's a real villain. They could have established him there as like a real threat to Jason Statham, and then we would have been, oh wait, now he's at the bottom of the sea. Jason Statham better watch out, because his old rival's back for the first 10 minutes of the movie. But
right,
c'est la vie.
Yeah, c'est la vie. Yeah. A little bit of there's a few things they could have reworked in here, but that's okay. But John, anything else you want to say about the movie before talk about MVM Plus?
No, man. No, I think we're good.
All right. So I haven't told you what we're doing for MVM Plus. So, come on to the next MVM Plus episode, where I'm going to be talking with John this week about genres that I have not talked to him about before, and we're going to go over things like the action genre. And I'm gonna dial in, John, on what your movie tastes are outside of giant monster films, because I don't know what you enjoy, and I think people might enjoy hearing myself talk about the things I enjoy that are not monster movies. I mean, I know everybody knows I like everything, but I think it'd be fun to grill you about that. And also, we got to talk about War of the Gargantuas and see what is going on here.
I hope we'll have a little bit of time to talk about some of the renovation work you've been doing on the bargain basement of Monster Podcasting Airways as well. It seems like every time I drop by, you've spruced up the dim dank bargain basement.
Yeah.
I mean, if I'm not mistaken, over there in the corner is that an Intex Pure Spa Plus brand inflatable hot tub that you've put in down here?
Yeah, it is. I got the hot tub. If you notice right above it on the windowsill, I have a spider that sits there and collects the ants that crawl through the window.
All right.
So I don't have to worry about it.
Yeah. Well, after a long, hard day of monsters versus men and men versus monsters, I mean, you got to relax in a hot tub. And plus, having a hot tub down here in the bargain basement, that's going to just add a lot of extra dankness, the moisture level. So I think on the whole, it'll just really help spooky the place up. It's going to be good.
It is. Yeah, it's definitely dank. That's what I would say. All right, John. So for our staple awards, for your compelling character award, who do you have?
All right, for compelling character, I've got to give it to Paige Kennedy as DJ, the total side character turned action hero. This, as you mentioned, like one of the most pleasant surprises in the movie. Just when you're about to roll your eyes at some, just totally unearned cheesy thing that the movie's going to do. No. Meg 2: in the Trench stares the sequel tropes of, side character turned action hero right in the eye and totally wins this staring contest. they set up DJ, who was in the first movie as just a regular like computer guy or whatever.
Right.
And, he witnessed and lived through the insanity of the Meg, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the Meg 2 asks, okay, like, if you actually experienced the Meg, all 2 hours of it or whatever, like, what would your natural reaction be? And they said, you know what DJ's natural reaction would be? It would be to train like a Navy SEAL, except just as one guy, doing the best he can, to make sure that if anything this crazy ever happened again, he would be ready for it. And the results are ridiculous and hilarious. How fully realized I'm sure he's got like his, FBI volunteer deputy badge at home, and he's gone through gun training, and he knows how to do a barrel roll, and he's watched every episode of MacGyver, and boy, does it really pay off. So yeah, compelling character for me is definitely DJ, the action hero.
Yeah, that turn was so awesome for him. Yeah, I think I selected him for the Meg 1 as well, Cliff. This is Jonas's best friend. He wasn't in this as much as I was hoping he would be, but I was glad to see him. And again, all of his moments with Jonas really work in the film. He's just such a great the actor that plays him. What's his name? Cliff Curtis.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sorry, he plays Mac. His real name is Cliff, but Cliff Curtis is such a great actor for Mac. And again, I think he does a really great job in a movie that probably doesn't deserve him. What about your most memorable line award, John?
All right. Well, most memorable line is, how can I resist? It's going to go to Jason Statham. Perhaps with an eye towards any Meg 2 haters out there, there's a line where he says, "There's a million scumbags in this world. It's hard to keep track of them all."
Was he saying this to you?
Well, maybe. He was definitely saying it to Montez, but maybe he was directing it at me too.
Yeah, I definitely had a Statham line as well. Jonas says, "See you later, chum." And I believe that's right after he kicks. I think it was. I'm trying to remember. Correct me. Is that when he kicks Montez off of the dock?
Yes.
And the Meg eats him.
Absolutely.
"See you later, chum." Oh, it's such a good line.
Absolutely.
Oh, well, what an awesome moment. All right, John. What about your Can't Believe That Acting award?
All right. So, Can't Believe That Acting. The Meg 2 really does fit the mold of so many classic monster movies, including just being packed with very workman-like performances, right? You've got Jason Statham, who is arguably an A-tier actor, but is probably just like the very top of the B-tier, doing his best Jason Statham. Mm-hmm. And a bunch of other actors who, have, they work every day for their paychecks. They're doing TV, they're doing, whatever movie work they can find. So, as I was thinking, who do I find most impressive in this movie? I've got to give Can't Believe That Acting award to Jing Wu as Jumin Zhang, the sort of Chinese lead. He's kind of like the Tony Stark of the movie. Now, it's sure. Like, I guess his lines, you could say, sometimes are a little stilted, but I really attribute that as much to the script and the writing as, it's not necessarily Jing Wu's fault. What we have here, though, is we've got a 49-year-old action star of Chinese cinema who's managed to learn enough English to star in a global summer blockbuster. And honestly, that's pretty impressive. If you compare him to, let's look at the flip side. When we think
Bing
of
Bing Lee, first off, from last movie, he's way better than she was.
Yeah, and think about the sort of international buddies that we know from other monster movies, right? Nick Adams, Russ Tamblyn. Now Nick Adams is a great actor. Russ Tamblyn maybe less so. But, you know, they couldn't be bothered to learn enough Japanese to deliver their lines even phonetically. You know, they just filmed their lines in English and got dubbed over. You know, Jing-Woo, he put in the work and, you know, delivered his lines in English pretty well. And I have to say, you know, some of his bits were actually genuinely funny. Like,
Yes.
I laughed out loud when, although granted, this was in, you know, he was delivering his lines in Chinese, but you know, when he plays, when they're trying to distract the mercenaries on Mana 1, and he just sort of hops out in front of them wearing like a construction worker outfit, and he starts, you know, blathering away at them in Chinese, saying, "I'm speaking in Chinese. You probably don't understand Chinese, but that's okay. You know, my pal sneaking up behind you." I mean, I thought that was great. So I got to give Can't Believe That acting to Jing-Woo.
Yeah. Yeah, he's so good. He's so much better in this than Bing Bing, especially.
How about you?
Yeah, for me, I've got Melisanthe Mahat as I think she was. How do they even say it in the movie? Regus?
Yeah, Regus. Absolutely.
I thought she was cool, and also she had like that genuine acting moment in the. While they're in the trench and she's got the gun pointed at Statham.
Mm-hmm.
Like, she acted way out of what this movie required in that moment. Like we didn't need that much emotion from you because no one else is presenting it in this movie. But she did a good job, and I thought she was a nice new addition to the Meg family. I hope she's not. If there is a third one, I hope she's not replaced because we had a few characters replaced from the first one that I didn't miss. But I hope that she's one of the ones that stick around like DJ does.
Yeah, heck yeah. I really enjoyed her too. I think of you know, nearly all the actors in this film. She gives one of the most solid performances, and she's definitely giving off like Private Vasquez vibes, you know, from Aliens. So. Yeah, I really enjoyed her performance as well.
For sure. And then let's do the That's a Good Shot award. I'll go first.
Sure.
I originally had the 300 kick where he kicks Montez off into the shark's mouth. It's not a good shot, but it's fun. But really, I think when I think back on the movie and my favorite parts of the movie, I think about that shot from really far away of them running towards the ship underwater with the Megs looming behind them.
Yes.
And it's just really dark. It's orange nearby where it's lit up. That image sticks in my mind. That's like a pretty tense moment, and that really sold that whole sequence to me.
Yeah, man. Yeah, definitely.
What about you, John?
All right, so I've got to go with. There is just a beautiful shot of Jason Statham mid-air, riding atop a massive wave on his jet ski. He is ringed in light, haloed like a saint, like Saint George the Dragon Slayer, and he has his explosive harpoon raised as he races toward victory or certain death in his one-on-one duel against the Beta Megalodon. What a shot. You could make a stained glass picture of that and hang it in a cathedral. It's just beautiful and totally sums up, you know, what makes this movie great.
Yeah. Hang it in a cathedral. You heard it from John. What about your unique awards, John? What do you got here?
All right. So, unique award. I'm hard pressed not to give it to Jason Statham. And my unique award is most likely to exterminate an endangered species. It goes to Jason Statham as Jonas Taylor for brutally murdering every single previously thought extinct animal that crosses his path. You know, no matter how valuable you may be to science or how rare you may be, how beautiful you may be to nature, Jason Statham is going to murder you.
I like that earlier you described him as eco-warrior, but then now you also pointed out that he kills literally everything.
He's a complicated man, you know?
Yeah, he's got layers. He's got layers. Yeah, it's so true. That's so true.
And how about your unique award, Alex?
Yeah, mine's the best sibling award. Let's just say this. It may have been a hang-up, but the worst sibling died, right? Now that we've now that we've got Jing Wu, Ju Ming's Chang. Now that we've got him, I'm never looking back. Like, I want to know how you died, sister of his, but if we don't learn, I'm not going to sweat it as long as he sticks around, you know? Him and his cool exosuits and his love shark.
Heck yeah.
I'm thankful for the change, quite honestly. But yeah, you know, I had another award that I had in my back pocket.
Yeah, let's hear it.
Which is this Science is Trash Award. What? How are these amphibious dinosaurs living in the trench? How is that happening? They only put them there because they were at the beginning of the movie. And they were like, yeah, we've got these CGI assets of this dinosaur. We're going to put them in the trench. They're like, but don't they need air to breathe? Like, don't worry about it.
They can hold their breath for a very long time. Yeah.
But they don't. But then the person's like, but they don't have gills. Don't worry about it. They live here. And then now they're going to be up there. And it's fine. Don't worry about it. It's good. We're going to have some Jurassic Park references out of it, and you're going to love it.
Oh, my goodness. Beautiful.
All right, John, I want to hear your final thoughts and I guess your tiered rating. This is your first episode, but I guess tier it out of Meg and Meg 1.
Yeah, so, I mean, clearly I confessed at the top of the show that I do not generally like giant animal monster movies, you know, because nearly all of them have the same basic premise. There is a giant animal. It's monstrous, and it will be killed by humans. Mm-hmm. But the Meg and really Meg 2: the Trench take this to an incredibly enjoyable extreme. The contest here, you know, really is not a one-sided hunt, you know, where man is dogging a whale, you know, with a flotilla of harpoon-festooned ships. You know, instead, what we have is a duel in the most classical sense of chivalric knights or honorable samurai or totally insane anime characters. We've got a one-on-one duel where each Meg tests its skill and its speed and its strength against that of Jason Statham. And it's truly marvelous. Now, is that enough to sustain the whole 116-minute runtime of Meg 2: the Trench? Well, no. But in the meantime, you know, we've got our mozzarella sticks at the Chinese buffet. We've got Mercenaries versus Dinosaurs. We've got a grab bag of Jason Statham action pieces. We've got, you know, enough buddy cop bits to fill an economy-sized popcorn bucket. You know, if you throw in a few sort of Showa monster movie era tropes like humanity working together to explore the unknown and advance human progress, and, you know, a questionable eco message, I'm in. I'm all in. Gamera tier.
All right. I like it, John. And I think I'm right there with you. This is a Gamera tier for me, and it's for really all the reasons you list. I love the trench sequence. I have a lot of fun with the back end. I do still feel like this is two movies cobbled together to make one. But then we also we do have these other sequences that I found really enjoyable. The DJ sequences of him being way too adapted to his new situations. And I also just really like our new main character of Juming. I think he's really cool, and he adds a lot to the movie. It's really the things that hurt for me is the villains kind of suck. The monsters are They're fun. I like that they have blood, but they're just sharks. There's no personality to them.
That's right.
I wish the giant squid had more to do. There maybe been more build up, like you said. I think you mentioned like some sort of rivalry or just to have it coming and maybe it feel like it can kill these sharks no problem, and that though like maybe the humans and the sharks have to team up to take. I don't know. Just give me something a little different.
Yep.
Than the last movie, but that's okay. This is a solid Guillermo tier movie. I really enjoyed it. I think for me, it is better than the first one in almost every way, except for the fact that it's just that. It's just an improvement of all the exact same things from the last movie, without adding a whole lot new.
Yeah.
Except for DJ, Super Spy. Oh, but yeah, that's it for me. Next week, John, we don't have a movie.
Oh, no. Did it get swallowed by 3 megs?
Yeah, it got swallowed by 3 megs, and it's still in its fantastical journey for me figuring out what the next movie is. But I hope when you all find out what is the next movie that you all like, that it's groovy, and maybe it'll have Scooby. It won't have Scooby, but maybe it will.
Oh boy.
I tried. You don't have to do it.
No, you know what? I'm here. I'm in the bargain basement, so live or die. I might end up on the rusty guillotine over there, but
there you go.
Next week's movie still remains a mystery. Will there be another host, or will they fall down the stairs, causing a catastrophe?
There you go. Yep. Flawless victory. That's how we do it on MVM. It always goes according to plan. All right. As always. Hey, actually, before I get into the normal spiel, John, I want to thank you so much for joining me today. It's been great, and you are a great podcast host. So thank you for joining.
Alex, thank you so much for the invitation. Circumstances notwithstanding, I know Eric is still missing in action. Nobody knows where he is. Has he been abducted by a Dracula? Has he been swept up by a mummy? Nobody knows. Yeah. Maybe, dear listener, if you want to find out, you could always subscribe to Patreon for a mere $2 a month to get all the inside scoop, and follow Eric on his. I don't know whether it's a side quest or just some dastardly danger. Who knows?
Yeah, is Eric alive or dead? Nobody has said. Oh man! All right. So as always, thanks for listening to Monsters vs. Man. Leave us feedback on iTunes or your podcast listening service of your choice, or at mvmpod.com, or email us at mvmpod@gmail.com, and I'll read your reviews or comments on the show. You can also follow us or message us on Twitter and Instagram at mvm_pod. Become a bargain basement at patreon.com/mvmpod and receive weekly bonus content, including special reviews, interviews, and host chats. And if you can't join at this time, a review or a share always helps. Monsters vs. Men is produced by Alex Cornett. Executive producers are Kevin Alexander, Faye Basier, John Freeman, Michael Herndon, and Christopher Clavero. Special thanks to our wives, Rock Band for PlayStation 3, which formed by Cell Block B, Louis Loops, Senior Honda, Drew the Collector, our Instagram connector, and you, the listener, for listening. Until next time, don't
let your adopted megalodon join a wild sex party at the bottom of the Mariana Trench.
Oh my God. And try to stay alive.
Mafia, wake up, wake up.
You have created a monster and it will destroy you.
That's right. Yeah, there's actually if you get swallowed by the Meg, yeah, you end up on a whimsical adventure. You don't suffer a horrifying death.